Mukund, friends. Dr. Rekha Shetty has left her footprint in many places and many organizations. As you know, she was our district governor in 1999-2000. And later she held positions of responsibility at the international level in Rotary, in several areas such as avoidable blindness and population control and so on. But Rekha Shetty is perhaps better known to the public as a management person. Now the Hindustan Times called her a corporate doctor. Now she started Mind Spa, an organization that helps people harness the powers of mind, body and soul. She started that about 2 decades ago. And she has conducted Mind Spa programs for blue chip corporates in India as well as corporates in other countries. And she studied problems and solutions in drug addiction in the US at the invitation of the US State Department. And despite all these preoccupations, she manages to turn out a book every now and then. And a couple of years ago, she wrote a slim, very readable, very useful book on heart attacks. It's called the Zero Heart Attack Path. And it's on how to keep your heart healthy. And now she has written a slim, very readable book on the Happiness Quotient. And if it can be summed up in one sentence, it is that happiness is a state of mind and not quite related to material wants and possessions. And as a public speaker, as you know, Rekha Shetty is very fluent, conversational, anecdotal, witty, and she writes the way she speaks, I think. It is one reason for her popularity. And no wonder she is invited to address Rotary district conferences everywhere. And one point I have noted with this book and any other book is that it's replete with references to India. Normally management books have international references, but her book usually has references to Indian history, Indian mythology, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana and so on. So it's very relevant to practicing managers in India. So I invite Dr. Rekha Shetty to take the floor and tell us about happiness.
Dignitaries on the dais, Madhu, who as usual I think wrote such a great introduction to this program that there's this huge audience here today. He wrote several things in that introduction which I myself didn't know. So I think it's thanks to Madhu that all of you are here. And I'm going to just dive into this book called The Happiness Quotient. It's my 5th book. And it's the first book which is written in the form of a story. I started writing it about 7 years ago, long before I wrote Innovation 90 Days to Transform Your Business. As a management book, then my editor said, why are you writing about such a lovely topic in such a hard to understand way? Can you make it simpler? So then I wrote it like a story. I'd just like to say that with this book I hope to really make a difference in the corporate world, create an epidemic of happiness in a space which I think has forgotten that people who produce things and earn profits also need to be happy. So if we can go to the next slide, which is a video. He won't let it go. And now look at that. This man has barely enough to eat, very little to wear, and see what he's trying. See, he has mastery over his work. And you know, having mastery over your work, and if you really love your work, I think you really enjoy it. And here I'd like to quote Khalil Gibran in the Prophet, where someone asked the Prophet, what is it to work with love? And the Prophet says, it is to weave the cloth from the strings of your heart as though your beloved were to wear it. Just to weave the cloth from the strings of your heart as though your beloved were to wear it. Imagine an epidemic of happiness, where everybody who's doing a certain job does it because they like doing it, because they want to develop mastery over it. So the whole book is based on the fact that when people are happy, they produce more and they create better things. It's written in the form of a meeting between a burnt out corporate executive and a person whom I call Sadhu Mama. So somebody asked me, who is Sadhu Mama? I said, Sadhu Mama is all the people, an amalgam of all the people whom we meet, who give us bits of wisdom that add up to the whole crossword, the whole crossword puzzle of life, because everyone gives us bits and pieces of that. And this man spends several weeks with Sadhu Mama and learns about the 7 radiant happiness habits. They're not habits, they're actually actions. How to activate 7 of these major areas which lead to happiness. Next. The first radiant happiness habit for physical fitness. I really started thinking about a book like this when I met a man who was a temple priest at Apollo. This was many years ago. So one day he sent word to me through somebody else. I didn't know him. He said, I'd like to meet that lady. So I went and met him, and he said, he was in the middle of the puja, so I was waiting for him. He came out and he said, I wanted to meet you and ask you why you're so sad. And I was taken aback because I didn't know that somebody who doesn't even know me would know how sad I was feeling, because I was going through a very bad patch. So he said, you know what, you're just fallen into a puddle of rainwater. Once you walk a little and cross the mountains, you'll find that this is only a puddle of rainwater and there's a huge and wonderful life ahead of you. So he said, see, it's very difficult to control the world around you. You can't control your family or the events of your life, but you can control the way you breathe. You can learn how to breathe correctly, he said. So I said, can you teach me? He says, yeah, you come on empty stomach, I'll teach you. So I sat down in that temple and I just learned the basics of pranayama, and I think I used that as a beginning of the book because that was the beginning of my own understanding or my own search for happiness. Next. So the first radiant action is for physical wellness, and it involves, according to Sadhu Mama, simple things like sleeping well, eating correctly, exercise, and all these things. And next. And then he talks about emotional wellness. And here he speaks about the major casualty which the modern world faces. When I used to drive through the highways in Tamil Nadu, I used to see all these chicken farms. Lots of chickens all masked up together, and they're not allowed to move. They're given steroids and they want the chickens to be fat, so they can't move at all. They're just sitting there and eating, and whatever they do is just cleaned out, and then they're of course slaughtered. Sometimes when I used to look at the kids in the cubicles, which all these companies have, just sitting there all day, becoming mouse potatoes, that's a new word I learned from my son, not a couch potato but a mouse potato, just sitting there going on and on. Then I used to think, there's so much like the chickens. Are we doing something that will totally destroy the brand new, brave new world that is available to our kids? And I was wondering, what can one do about it? And next. In this book, Sadhu Mama talks about the difference between the positive and the negative emotions. Here I have taken ideas from the Navarasa. He says when you get angry, 36 chemicals pour into the blood. Chemicals like adrenaline, histamine, blood sugars, heart rate goes up, pulse rate goes up. all parts of the brain are switched off except what you need to kill or run. This is the fight or flight response. So Sadhu Mama says that when you get angry, you can do these 3 things. He said, when you really get angry, you can stop doing everything, drink a glass of water and don't act. Because when you're angry, whatever you do or say is going to be wrong. Then he says, in the amber, you think about what is the result you want. When you're angry, you're just thinking, I want to kill this guy. But in amber, you may think, see, I just like him to treat me with greater respect. And then you come to the green where you decide on that action. And he says, then you decide and negotiate what action you want to take. Next. And on the when he talks about anger, he says when you're happy, on the other hand, I'd just like you to turn to your neighbor, shake hands with your neighbor, and look at that person with all affection and say, what I really like about you is. What I really like about you is. Come on, everybody at the back. What I really like about you is. See, if you don't like them, don't say anything. Then you know that guy next to you doesn't like you at all. So,
you're quiet, humble, always smiling.
So now I wish you to take a videotape of what happens. See, this is called the affirmation. It's a very simple thing. What I really like about you is, like your whole family, your kids, everybody is waiting for that sentence, no? What I really like about you. And rarely do they hear it. They always hear what we don't like about them. It's a very simple thing. I met a doctor a few months ago. His name is Dr. Tam Mustafa. He's a, Rotary is a big, very successful doctor, and he's also a politician, very well known. So he was just telling me that the worst regret of his life is that he never told his mother that how much she meant to him. He said that, he always wanted to be there when she was not well, but he was very busy, and then one day suddenly she died without much warning. He says, and I never told her how I really felt about her. And he was weeping. This is a man into his 60s and very, in control of his life and so many people, and he was crying. I think the first thing I'd request everyone to do is just write off that letter. Like what you really like about the people you love. If you don't do it, really one day it may just be a little too late. And this thing on the third radiant action next for personal wellness. Maybe you should just escape. See, it's this particular action is for taking care and loving yourself, because according to this, according to Sadhu Mama, he says if you don't love yourself, how can you love anybody else? Like if you have a horrible toothache, how can you be very kind to others? So you've got a very blinding headache, imagine. How can you be nice to anybody else? So he says, first learn to love yourself, care for yourself, so that everything that because if you, supposing you don't have money, you can't give somebody else money if you don't have it. Similarly, it's the same thing with love. If you don't love yourself and you don't have it, it's like asking for a beggar to give out a check for several thousands. He doesn't have it. So he says, start. Pardon?
Not today.
No.
Not today.
Not today. Okay, next.